on the being nimble, which is on enterprise agility and how to make organizations sense and respond to change. We have our speaker here, who has always been with us, Mr. Kate Ellis, who is a fellow of the Institute of Information Management. And also he's from the Canada chapter. Okay, so you permit me to do a brief summary of your profile so that we can start the presentation. Okay, Ellis is the Chief Engagement and Growth Officer at IIBA. He was here with us last year. He's an honorary fellow of the Institute of Information Management for Africa. He's recognized as an experienced senior executive and visionary with more than 20 years as an executive in marketing, operations, research, and business development. Proactive and result-driven, adapt in complex process analysis and developing business requirements for technology systems in the IT services industry. He is a solid communicator who will institute initiatives and carry them out in order to effectuate positive change, efficiency, and increase profitability. A speaker and an author. He built his career on the following competencies: setting strategies, building teams, sales and marketing strategies, contract negotiations, Fortune 500 clients he worked with, set directions of mission and focus. He does research and analysis, the public speaker. He has several publications. He has strategic alliances with so many organizations. And he has also in his career, he has information technologies and software services. So permit me to welcome Mr. Kate Ellis, the speaker for today. And Kate, without any further delays, I would like to welcome you, please, to share your screen to commence the presentation.
Well, thank you so much.
While we are waiting for Kate, please, if you have any questions, you will use the chat box to send your questions. While we're having that, every information that we're going to disseminate in here in this meeting will be through the chat box. So after Kate's presentation, we will be having the questions and answers. After that, we'll have our introduction of the ESCO members. Then we'll have a group photograph, then we'll end the session. So Kate, please, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to bring up the chat in front of me. And if you do have, and it's certainly—
Kate, I think we can't hear you. If you're speaking, we can't hear you, please.
Are others hearing me just fine or no? Is that coming through? We're doing okay?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's great. So, by the way,
are you speaking? We're not able to hear you, please.
I think
your microphone is unmuted, but it seems you're speaking, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can hear him.
Yeah, somebody just—
I think it should be from your—
We can hear him. I can hear him.
Yeah, thank you so much. So somebody's got to text Alexander and let him know, because I don't think he can hear me. So that's okay. Right. So thank you, everybody, for inviting me to this session today. And we're going to talk about enterprise agility. We're going to talk about this ability to get stuff done. And I know a lot of you here, you're executives, you've got organizations that you're working with, you're working even as, foundationally within the organization. And so many of you had, this desire to get things done within the organization. And somehow the difference between what you wanted to get done and what actually got done are two completely different things.
I don't know whether it's from my side. I don't think I can.
I'm not sure if everybody else has already experienced that kind of thing. So what we're going to talk about is, how do you create a more agile enterprise? How do you build an organization that can sense and respond to change and really develop the organization systemically, okay? So hopefully it's going to be helpful for you. And I think let's just start with this characteristics of a nimble organization, what we mean by this. And so often I think all of you here, you're trying to do things like, can you get clarity of purpose and mission? Can you really get to decentralized leadership and much faster decision-making? Can you get to a culture of employee empowerment and enablement? Are these things that people here are trying to get through to, like you're trying to enable for your organization? And just use the chat, because a lot of people are. You're trying to create these environments. Yes, thank you so much. This strong core of technology and data architecture, this balancing of rigor, and people try for these things. But can we agree that they're very difficult, right? And when we think about the stories all of us have and the challenges all of us have in trying to get to these states, we get a little frustrated sometimes because it should be easier, but welcome to business, it can be difficult. So what I'm going to talk about is this thing, and I'm going to talk about, I think, getting into the sense of, all of us know the pace of change today is incredible. Would you agree with me when I say that? The pace of change is just outrageous today. And use the chat, right? When we think about COVID and we think about the regulatory environment and we think about the competitive environment that we're all in, we think about the macroeconomic shift, all of a sudden we're going into potentially an economic downturn, and then it flips around. Company and corporate environment. The amount of pace of change is just outrageous. But what we're finding is that 76% of organizations that we talk to are deliberately increasing the pace of change out there. What does that mean to all of you? It kind of means you haven't seen anything yet, right? If you think the pace of change now is difficult, think about what this begins to mean going forward 5 years from now, where the pace of change is 2x what it was today. Human knowledge, when we think about it, it used to take decades to double the amount of human knowledge out there. Now that this is something that's measured in hours, right? And I know that's a scary thought, but that's our reality as an as a world organization and as businesses within it. So we have to go past today. It used to be, let's look at agile, let's look at projects, look at all these different ways of enabling change in organizations. And that's no longer going to be viable going into the future. We really need to look at how do we engineer the ability to change into an organization. Does that make sense? People with me on this? Just use the chat box if you can, okay? Because what we're looking for is this ability to differentiate organizations compared to your peers. How would you rate your ability to sense and respond to change? Just take a minute and answer that in the chat, okay? How would you rate your organization's ability to sense and respond to change? Just take a second, use the chat. You're great, you're not great. Just be simple about it, and then we'll continue the conversation. I have to get some participation here, guys. Internalize it. Most of you, or many of you, will say, you know what, we could do better, right? And in fact, thank you. And in fact, when we look at this, there's this vast difference between organizations. Compared to your peers, how would you rate your organization's ability to sense and respond to change? Many organizations recognize that they lag behind. And there's this sense of we're doing something wrong. Other organizations, they exceed or are best in class, right? My organization could do better. Thank you so much. I appreciate the honesty on that one. Many organizations exceed or best in class. And what we found is that there's a vast difference between these classes of organization. So for your own self, it goes competitive organizations have 2.2 times higher nimble capacity, this ability to be nimble. And what this implies to us, finding one thing that is so vastly different between organizations that lag and those that lead, being nimble, the ability to respond to change is something that not only can be built, it can be measured, and it can be scaled. There's a lot to it, but this is something that can be a disciplined part and engineered into your organization if you're interested in that. So let's walk through the how of this. Does that sound like an interesting topic? What we're going to talk about in the session today is not only how do you go about measuring, like, but what is this thing called Nimble? Because I'm sure all of you have looked it up and said, what's Nimble? And the definition so often is agile. And there's this nuance in that word that I want to talk about what it means. And then there's very specific practices. There are 8 of them that I want to talk to you about and point out the differences. Lugosia, I think from your perspective, you may be very interested in some of these. All of you here, right, may say, yeah, our organization is not as nimble. It's not as good at responding to change as it could be. So what are those practices that you need to build up in the organization? Why be nimble? Because those organizations really perform differently. And then what's the role of business analysis or the technical side of the organization in doing this? Because there's integrated roles that we have to look at in terms of implementing this. All of this comes from a vast study that we did looking across the worldwide, 436 respondents into this. If you want the study, go take a look online at IBA.org and you'll get it. Eugene, you're extremely right. Change is quite difficult. It is a constant reality. Absolutely, it's difficult. And you have to build the ability to change and understand change inside the organization. And it's not just having a change management person. Today's reality is that change is far, far more complicated. How many people here have been involved in a digital transformation? Betting it's maybe a third of you, okay? Because, you know, this idea of, and why am I using this word nimble? Because so often when you look up nimble in the dictionary, you get agile, you know, but it's not. There's a very specific nuance in this English word, right? This unusual word, because it's about precision. You know, it's the difference between agile, which means you're moving quickly, and nimble is more like a dancer. You're moving with precision and beauty and speed and craftsmanship, right? It's a very different thing. The nuance is different. How many people here are involved in a digital transformation? I think many of you. And I'm going to challenge you that there's this assumption that if you could just do the digital transformation, the organization would have this ability to transform in the future. It will have caught up and it will have this ability to transform in the future. Do you realize that that's not a true statement, right? It can't. And this is why so many digital transformations fail. How many here are trying to create more data-driven organizations? There's this assumption if we could be more data-driven, we could transform, we could stay transformational into the future. What if we became more stakeholder-driven? What if we listened better to our customers? Can we implement what they're saying better? People intermingle organizational imperatives with this ability to sense and respond to change, assuming that if they get better at that imperative, they can create an ability to change. And that's just not true. It's a completely different thing. The second is how many people here are involved in, let's say, an agile implementation? How many people here have been involved in an agile implementation where the organization became less agile as a result of implementing agile, the work methodology? I'm betting most or half anyway of you, right? There's this agile and lean Six Sigma adaptive methodologies, you know, waterfall resilient methodologies. These are all ways of work, methods of work. They're ways of doing things. People can't be making up the way they're going to do the work all the time. You can't. You have to have established ways of work. But the way of work does not, by definition, make your organization more effective at change. These are different things. You can implement an agile method and become much more rigid in your organization. The capability of change, being nimble, is something completely different than these two. It sits at the center of, enables, empowers, and creates the ability to effectively get benefit from method and be able to drive things like digital transformation. These are critically important. It is the scalable capability of an organization to sense and respond to change with precision and speed. It's a different thing, okay? And it sits at the heart of it. And for me, when you take that forward, you have to define, well, what is this, right? There are 4 dimensions to this thing. First of all, there are intentional practices that you're building up in 8 very specific areas, all right?